Where should I have it?
Yeah, we're gonna go right here in front, take a picture.
Caroline Molman. Ella Muley. I think I said that one right. Yeah. Yep. Aiden Lohan. Grace Oliveri. Jack Smith. Audrey Paterniani. Grace Paterniani. Kennedy Piacentini. Isabel Reese. Sierra Roisman. Benjamin Ross. Angie Ruiz. Maria Ruiz. Charlotte Spotto. Andrew Tartaglia. Caroline Weiss. Vanessa Weisberg. Rosalie Zeno. Anthony Bell. Peter Bell. Colin Bible. Aiden Hanratty. Mary Fratercongelli.
Aiden, right?
Logan Demanchik. Madeline Katzman. Haley Katzman. Ava Hopkins. Madeline Heckler. Needy Kamatar. Erin Kenny. Lauren Lamena. Megan Lamena. Morgan Levy. Mrs. Jessica Kennedy. Mrs. Deirdre O'Brien. And myself. Thank you so much. It just means so much to me how well we did. We're defending the trophy. It's staying at the castle. And that's the end of that. So thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you to Ms. Marks for putting all of those proclamation certificates together for them. That was very sweet. Thank you.
Okay, wait, she's going on.
Sorry. I just quickly is that okay? I just quickly wanted to thank each and every single one of you. The money you raise goes to our athletes who compete for free. So it allows them to compete in 22 Olympic-style sports. It gives them the opportunity to travel regionally, statewide. They can then go to USA Games and then go on to like World Games. So I know you might not think so, but what you're doing has a very, very great impact. So thank you very much. Who do I give this to?
This is the Casio,
Okay.
and you can stand against them. Yeah, please. I'll get them to the long one getting in first. Okay.
Righty, and this evening, we usually have our student liaison doing our student update, but Mr. Bell will not be here this evening. He's coming in late right now from a meet, and then he's leaving very, very early for counties tomorrow, so he sends his regrets, but we do wish him and the rest of the students participating the best of luck. With that, we're up to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Tomio. I have a number of exciting events to share with you that have occurred throughout the last month. We had our amazing district-wide STEAM event that was held on January 30th. It was entitled Out of This World with STEAM. Special thanks to Mrs. Valley, all of our directors, our teachers who volunteered to be here, and the families that all came out to participate in this amazing event. College night was held on January 22nd at John Glenn High School, and on January 31st, the Long Island Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence provided an informative presentation for all of our parents. Congratulations to our John Glenn wrestling team. They've been recognized as county champions, and in the dual meet championship, they placed second in the state. So congratulations. And tomorrow, as Mr. Tomio shared with you, our wrestling athletes will participate in the individual counties. So we're excited to see how they make out tomorrow. Our boys basketball team is at the top of their league. They have 2 games remaining to play. And in our track team, winter track season has been successful. The boys 4x200 relay, they have been the league champs, and they've placed second within small schools, and our girls 4x200 relay team were also league champs and second in small schools. So congratulations to all of our athletes. Over 24 Elwood student musicians have been selected to participate in SCMEA, which is really a tremendous honor for our students as well as for our music department, so we want to recognize them. And this weekend, our EMS, our middle school, presents The Little Mermaid, Friday evening at 7 o'clock and Saturday at 2 p.m. So those of you who can make it, you're in for a special treat. Special thanks to Scepter for holding their wonderful bowling fundraiser and for supporting all of our students at all times. Thank you so very much. And I'd like to share with you that this past Saturday, members of the Board of Education, PTA Council President, and our administrative team attended the Regional Legislative Workshop that is sponsored by Eastern Suffolk BOCES and Suffolk Regional PTA. And this workshop provides the opportunity for school districts throughout Long Island to speak with our legislators in regard to educational topics, and it was really a very thought-worthy, beneficial morning for all who attended. So I just wanted to say that we are proud to be Elwood. We should be proud to be Elwood. When we speak to other school districts, there are really great things happening here. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fallon. That brings us up to our first residents' remarks. Seeing no residents wishing to speak, there's residents' remarks later on. We are up to our our presentation, our budget workshop number 3. Ms. Dunkel.
Good evening, board members, and good evening to community members. The focus of tonight's presentation is to provide an update on the budget process and on the governor's executive proposals. This slide represents our goals. As always, it is the goal of the board and administration to maintain the excellence and diversity of our programs while maintaining the safety, health, and welfare of our students and staff. As equally important is the responsibility to our residents and taxpayers We must find the balance to support the community while maintaining our fiscal health. This slide relates directly to our goal of maintaining fiscal health. Elwood has received no designation from New York State for the 5th year in a row. This is a reflection of the current administration and board's fiscal oversight as it relates to items such as debt management and fund balance management. The governor's proposal. So, the governor is proposing overall a $500 million cut to state aid across New York State. In doing so, she's eliminating Safe Harmless, and I'll just explain that briefly. Safe Harmless allows for every school district to receive at least what they received the year before in state aid. If the formula calculates out and they're to receive less money, Safe Harmless prevents them from doing so. So by eliminating Safe Harmless, the governor is instituting cuts across many districts. I believe there's 32 districts in Suffolk County alone that are set to receive less money in state aid than they did the year before. The other piece of the formula has to do with the inflationary factor. If she was to leave that inflationary factor alone, the percentage would be 4.1%. Currently, it's at 2.4%. And that reduces, again, each school district's potential allotment for state aid. The impact on Elwood is a very small increase to our state aid of approximately $200,000. So we'd be receiving $200,000 more for next year than we did in the current school year. So to help combat the governor's proposal, as part of my role on the Suffolk County Association of School Business Officials, we attended an advocacy event in Albany on January 23rd and had the opportunity to meet with our local assemblymen and senators, which included, among others, Assemblyman Steve Stern, Senator Matera, and Senator Martins. Each member of our group was able to express their concern and provide insight as to how the governor's proposal is going to affect education on Long Island. It was clear that both governing bodies were not in full support of the governor's proposals, and we are expecting some changes prior to the state budget adoption, which the state's budget adoption has a deadline of April 1st, and we're already being told that they're not going to meet that deadline. Just continuing on, as I mentioned earlier, as far as the governor's proposal and the impact on Elwood, as you can see on the slide, last year, or in the current school year, we received an increase of roughly $1.8 million. Next year, we're proposed to receive roughly $196,000. This slide speaks to our tax levy. Our initial tax levy projection at this point is 2.02%, but it is subject to change. This calculation is due to New York State on March 1st, and as part of the discussion for tonight, administration is seeking advice or guidance from the board on the recommended tax levy in establishing the current budget. This slide is just a reminder to the board and the community. This is a 10-year history of our tax levy. And as you can see, over the last 10 years, we've either been at or below the tax cap. Regarding this year's current budget, this slide represents some of the programs and positions that are still in review for the 24-25 school year. And just to review some of the items we spoke about at the last meeting, I'll just highlight a few. One of them is the E&L staff at Boyd. Our E&L staff continues, our E&L student population continues to increase and requires intervention services that can assist these students with their necessities. There are a few different teaching assistant positions. One is instructional technology, 2 are in the classrooms, and similarly to the academic intervention, we have an E&L assistant that works in the classroom supporting our ELL students. sorry, I just wanted to go back. So from the director of MST position down on this particular graph, I just wanted to highlight that these are the positions and programs that were previously supported by the COVID relief funds, and we have currently moved those into the current budget, but as we're talking about, they're currently under review. Additional expenses that are included in the 24-25 budget are new federal and state mandates. One is FAPE, which is free and appropriate education. So essentially, a new guideline has come down that enforces or forces school districts to educate students until they're 22, where the current law has them being educated until they're 21. 21st century computer science and digital fluency learning standards is another mandate. Expansion of E&L programs, and we also have some athletic equipment that Section 11 or New York State is now enforcing has to be in place for next school year. So outside of the budget, I just wanted to briefly bring up to the Board of Education and the community, I will be making a recommendation for Proposition 2, which is to spend some additional money out of the capital reserve. In 2018, the community approved the establishment of a capital reserve, and when we've had the opportunity, we've placed money in the capital reserve to cover some expenses for capital projects. In order for us to spend money, we need approval from the community. So last year, we put up the same proposal, and the community overwhelmingly supported us, so I thank everyone for that. But we're looking to spend additional money, up to $500,000, for district-wide vehicles and improvements, continuing improvements for both our building infrastructure and our technology infrastructure. And again, in order to spend that money, we need approval from the community with a simple minority of 50+1. Does anyone have any questions?
When you talk about taking the money out of the capital reserve, can you elaborate more on what improvements to the building infrastructure and what improvements to the technology infrastructure you would be spending that money on?
So currently, as far as the building infrastructure, our new director of facilities has been assessing the needs throughout the 4 buildings that we have, and he's noticed some things. I don't want to speak, as part of my next presentation, I'll be detailing, I guess, more line items on that. One of them does have to do with, and I don't want to confuse anyone, because one of them has to do with a section of roofing at Boyd. Now, but that roof was not part of the roof project from 2018, because that portion of the roof, which had to do with the connection of the 2 buildings, was still under warranty from when it was first installed. So that's one piece of it. As far as technology infrastructure, Mr. Honorato and I have been talking about different ideas, and one of the largest projects that he's looking for has to do with installing new fiber cabling, which would help support cellular service and Wi-Fi and just our overall technology infrastructure throughout the district. So those are 2 very large items. And we're still obtaining quotes and vetting some vendors to get more of a solid number on that. That's why at the time I'm requesting up to $500,000, but before we move forward with the actual proposition, we'll have an exact dollar amount. Oh, and I'm sorry, I also just wanted to highlight, as part of the capital reserve, again, the money has already been put into the capital reserve, so it will not have any effect on the tax levy this year or on residents' taxes as whole, because it's money that the district already has.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dunkel. That was a great presentation. I just wanted to congratulate you on the fact that this is the 5th year in a row that Elwood has received no designation, and that does deserve some congratulations, because I know prior to that we were not no designation, so I wanted to give you a round of applause for that.
Thank you. It's a team effort, but thank you.
Yes, it's a team effort, but thank you. I just had a question regarding the aid that was received in 23-24. So we received an increase in the state aid of 1.887761. So this year's aid is not that plus the 196,150. This year's aid is 196,150.
No, that, the 196 is the increase we're receiving. So if we received, let's just say for argument's sake, we received $2 million last year, now we're going to receive $2.2 million. It's just the
so
increase.
we do have a little, like a tiny bit
Yes,
of
we're not
increase.
losing aid, but
Okay.
our increase that we're used to has been drastically reduced.
Okay, yes. So comparatively, this is much less increase than we're used to seeing.
Correct. And
Okay.
again, we're hoping that the advocacy that's going on up in Albany is going to make a difference, and we're hoping for additional funds. If we do get additional funds, I don't believe it to be anything not substantial, but I would probably say it would be between maybe $150,000 and $300,000.
Okay, okay, great, thank you.
Ms. Weiss?
Thank you. Can't believe we're doing budget already. But by not meeting the deadline, how is that trickle down to us in Elwood? I mean, I know it's like, it's happened before, but I just,
Correct, because the board,
this is such a tight budget year that it's, you know, I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
so the Board of Education we have our own, New York State school districts have their own deadline for adopting a budget, which is in April also. What they recommended last year was that school districts build their budget and propose their budget based on the numbers that existed at that time. They also have the option across the state to extend the deadline for adoption. That would be our other option. Otherwise, to be fiscally responsible, would have to go with the numbers at that time that the governor is proposing.
But currently, the governor's not proposing anything, correct?
Correct. So there is another state aid run that comes out after February 15th, and on occasion, there will be another one in March.
Okay.
But the final runs do not come out until after the state budget is actually adopted.
So any advocacy that we're hoping to get additional funding for could possibly come in either of those February or March dates?
It's possible, but not probable.
Not-
Again, we probably won't see the final number until after the budget is actually adopted.
Okay. The next question I have is the new federal and state mandates that are being proposed for 24-25. Do we have any noise about whether those are going to get, we're going to get monies for them, we're going to get funding, or are those going to be considered, what is it, unfunded?
Unfunded, yeah. At this time, we are not anticipating any assistance from the government on those mandatory programs.
Mhm. So, and you may not have these numbers, but if you look at something like adding the computer class, okay, that 21st century, what kind of cost are we looking at? Like, how much are we looking to add into, is that, you know?
Depending on enrollment, because I believe it's something that's, and Dr. Hood, you can interrupt me if you need to, that starts at the 9th grade. So depending on how many students enroll and whether it's a half a semester or a full year semester, we could be looking at a 0.5 teacher or a 1.0 teacher plus benefits. So it could range anywhere from, I would say, $70,000 to maybe $130,000. Again, I'm not sure of the needs at this moment as far as FTE is concerned. Dr. Hood can speak to it.
When will we have a better idea or more specific number as to how much the federal and the state mandates are going to, they're going to cost our district, so that, you know, and we have to, for the budget for next year?
So I would say within the next 4 weeks, by the time the expenditure budget is presented, we will have all of those numbers. Right now, we have rough estimates.
So at the next budget number 4 meeting, we should have something like that, right? Or is that?
Yeah, either 4 or 5, yes. We have to present both the revenue side and the expenditure side of the budget.
Okay.
If I could just touch on what, if you don't mind, Ms.
No,
Weiss
go
brought up.
ahead.
So there's that new free and appropriate education where, you know, students now can stay till they're 22, but they're not giving us any money for this. So it's one of these things that they're telling us we have to do, and they're not giving any districts money to support the extra education for these students. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So these unfunded mandates are what we need to take legislative action on, and as a board, we need to unite with other school boards and other New York boards and say that, You can kick this down to us, but you can't expect us and the taxpayers to pay for it. So this is legislative action that we need to take as a board and join forces, because it's this one, it's the next one, it's the ones we got last year. They just keep coming, and if the governor wants to put a budget out that's not sustainable for us. We get a $200,000 increase, but $600,000 in costs. So, I know people out there imploring the governor to sharpen her pencil and to take a hard look at this budget, but I'm not sure she will. But I think advocacy measures really need to be loud this year. A message needs to be heard. Our communities won't stand for this. I think this is our voice to make sure that's out there.
And I agree with that. Like I said, on January 23rd, when we were up there advocating, there was a group, I believe, of 9 of us, just from Long Island, in our advocacy group. But, we were in the Capitol building, and there were groups everywhere and meeting with their own constituents, like, and local assemblymen and senators. And without naming names, most of the politicians we spoke with do not support her proposals, and they are fairly certain that additional funds will be coming. But again, how much, we don't know.
And I would say those voices were very similar on Saturday's legislative breakfast. The questions that came out and the electeds that were there had a common thread of they're going to advocate.
Just one more question. Most of the, under the new and federal state mandates, most of those, the first 3, are reoccurring every year. So they're going to be built in. But the 4th one, I'm just curious as to how that comes. Is it just...
So that would be a one-time, one-time equipment purchase from the athletic department. I believe that's roughly $50,000 for those 2 shot clocks.
Is that, it's just so weird. Like, it doesn't seem like it's part, is that a safety issue? Do you have any idea on that? Like, what is making it be a mandate?
I believe they're trying to, as part of safety, but also to help move the games along, whether it be, I don't know, daylight or whatnot. But I had a brief conversation with Mr. Shanahan about it, but it is something New York State is instituting beginning with the next school year. So I can expand on that a little bit more at the next presentation if you'd like.
It's such a bizarre, like, you're looking at mandates, and most of them are educational, and they're reoccurring, and this is like an athletic purchase.
Right, and
So
I
it's kind of,
think, not to interrupt you,
if it
but...
was a defibrillator, and that's kind of where I'm trying to...
Right, similar to the helmets that we have to purchase every, they're very expensive, but it's all for safety, obviously.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the presentation.
Melita?
So just for the public, this particular budget will be inclusive of everything that currently exists. So it's a rollover budget with respect to program, staffing, class size. We're projecting to maintain everything that we have, and then we're going to include the enhancements listed on your slide at the 2.02%. So can we just, clearly with the increase in aid and a 2.02, mathematically that doesn't play out. So how are we coming up with the difference from last year's budget to this year's budget?
So, we're still, again, building the budget. Some of the numbers are fluctuating, but the best option for the community at this point would be to increase our fund balance allocation and possibly increase the designation of reserves that help fund the budget. And again, that puts us in a place for deficit spending, which we do each year, but we just have to be careful how much of that money we're utilizing, because each year we utilize it, it decreases, and at some point we won't have the funds to support the deficit.
Right, so our rating is based on our reserves. The money that we borrow for bond improvements, the interest rates are based on that rating. And so in order to continue to be sound fiscally, we've been talking about deficit spending for years, and I have been an advocate to not continue deficit spending, and we continue to keep coming under the cap, and we're coming to a point that it's really impacting us, especially only being able to go to 2.02% tax levy. And while can totally understand that everybody is struggling, all of our bills have gone up, you know, it feels like the bleed never stops. We cannot just continue to deficit spend. So I support going to the cap this year. I hope that my colleagues support that as well.
Thank you for the presentation. This cap's different than most years, right? This cap is almost at the tax cap number, so it's a easier one to swallow, if you will. And being able to roll it over for the most part of the budget, obviously it's not a complete rollover. As Ms. Mamadou said, we will be deficit spending. I will speak a little bit to the audit committee to the extent of, without divulging information, that's obviously confidential, but our auditors come in and we are in good fiscal standing. Our fund balance is funded where it should be. Our reserves are where, you know, where could they be? Obviously everyone wants a bigger savings account, but they're healthy. And that's based on our designation. Clearly that is an indicator that we are in a healthy financial standing. To talk to Ms. Mamadou's point, we have been below the cap. I think to this board's credit, we've been very methodical on how we build our budgets to make sure that they are met with the voter approval that we have seen. I look at the 10-year outlook, and 2021 is really the largest year where we left a lot of money on the table, but that was the COVID year, and it was a 6% opportunity. Nobody was going out for 6% during COVID. Everywhere else, we were flush, slightly below, so I think we've done a decent job of putting forth a budget that is palatable for our community. With that said, you know, $200,000 in increase is minimal. You know, we're in the position to deficit spend because our governor is irresponsible right now. I think, you know, it's a tough thing to say out loud, and I'll say clearly it's where our money is not being utilized by our state properly. There is money going to New York's upstate New York. There's money going into the city. There's very little going to Long Island right now.
That's been a challenge for all of time, essentially, and that's something that we speak to constantly in our advocacy groups, because I believe Long Island pays roughly 70% of the state taxes, and we only receive about 25 to 30% back for state aid. So it's a hard pill to swallow when we're funding the rest of the state. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
If I could ask, do I have some type, I'm not a vote, but,
Understood.
you know, guidance from the board as far as the budget is
Ms. Dunkel's
concerned?
looking for guidance this evening as to where to start to build the budget at. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is not the number that we're clearly identifying, but this is the budget this is the number you want to build the budget at, correct? Okay. So the recommendation from our business official this evening is to build at the cap of 2.02%. Not a vote, but consensus of the board is to go forward. I'm seeing head nods.
I agree.
5
yes.
head nods.
Mhm.
Yes.
No vote, but 5 head nods.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us up to our donations this evening. Dr. Siddiqui?
Thank you, Mr. Tamio. So be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts the following donations from the Elwood Booster Club with gratitude for $2,640 to support the following after-school clubs for the 2024 winter season. Boyd Makerspace Club, which is for 5 weeks, 1 session, $400. Boyd Dance Club, 6 weeks, 1 session, $480. Harley Makerspace Club, 5 weeks, 2 sessions, $800. And the Harley Art Club, 6 weeks, 2 sessions, $960.
May I have a motion for
Oh, no,
the-
we're not
Oh,
done.
there's more, sorry.
No, we're not done.
2 more.
The,
Sorry.
also, the Elwood Booster Club is also donating for the hack pitching machine with a value of $3,077 and 1 batting cage with a value of $2,989. So we would really like to thank the Elwood Booster Club for all of their donations. If you're if you don't know the Elwood Booster Club, they do support and give back to the Elwood School District. And some of their sessions are amazing. If your kids haven't signed up for them yet, please do, because they are very helpful and they're supported by you and given back to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Siddiqui. May I have a motion for all the donations on the agenda this evening? Motion, Mrs. Weiss, second, Mrs. Mamalito. All in favor? 5-0. Brings us up to our consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion, Mr. Scarola, second, Mrs. Weiss. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? 5-0. And that brings us up to our policies. As always, thank you to our interim superintendent, Ms. Fallon, Dr. Siddiqui, and Ms. Weiss for being a part of the policy committee. There was a large amount in front of you this time, so thank you for taking a look at all those. We have one first read of draft policy in front of us, as well as a second read after that. This evening we have the draft policies. There is a bunch of them, so I will just go through them quickly. 4321.12, 4321.12-R, 4321.12-E, pertain to timeout and physical restraints, and 4327 homebound instruction. Are there any questions or comments regarding those two policies?
Kelly, can you just briefly touch on how those revisions came about, that they're not newly created policies, how the policies just came about, why we're revising them?
So revisions have been made to the policies as a result of recommendations that come from New York State, and we work closely with New York State school boards in determining and developing policy. You can individualize your policies to your school district, and that is often what happens, with the policy committee as we do that. So there were pieces of our policies that were absolutely fine and in place, and then there were a couple of additions that were made to each of them.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, hearing those two policies, do I have any questions or concerns regarding those? All right, none. Ms. Marks, would you please place those on the March 21st agenda for a second reading and a potential adoption, please? And then tonight, we do have a second read. May I please have a motion for the following? Whereas it is customary practice of the Board of Education to have two readings of a policy prior to its adoption, and whereas the board wishes to adopt one policy recommended by the policy committee to wit workplace violence prevention and on an expedited basis so that said policy will be effective immediately. Therefore, be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the interim superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby waives the board's customary practice of two readings prior to the adoption of policy and adopts the following policy as presented to the board at this meeting, which will be incorporated by reference in the minutes of this meeting. May I have a motion? Questions?
Yeah, let's
May I have a
have a
motion?
comment.
Motion.
Do it.
Dr. Siddiqui, second. Mr. Scarola, questions or comments?
So I just wanted to comment, as Mrs. Weiss and I sit on the policy committee, that, we usually do two readings. So the first reading, like the previous ones, were on the agenda, and that gives the community and everyone a chance to read them, and then the next time we vote on them. This one, however, it was brought to our attention that we really need to approve this to abide by
A deadline.
a deadline, and I believe New York State law, but I'll let Mrs. Fallon comment on that.
Absolutely.
But that is why we kind of went outside the process to make sure we expedite the policy.
Great. Yes, Dr. Siddiqui, all school districts needed to adopt the workplace violence prevention. This was initially a policy that was in place for workplaces, municipalities, and then it was extended to school districts. So school districts all needed to have this policy as part of their policy manual. So we moved forward with a February adoption as that was what was required by districts.
Thank you.
Thank you. So motion and a second on the table. Questions or comments? Continue. Seeing no other questions or comments, all in favor? 5-0. Thank you. That brings us up to our second residence remarks. In a second. Go ahead. Ms. Dunkel has some exciting news to share, sorry.
I just wanted to take, it'll just take a minute. I just wanted to take this opportunity to welcome one of the new staff members who was just board approved this evening, who's here sitting with here tonight, Ms. Lois Brzozowski. So, Lois, thank
Welcome.
you for being here.
Thank you, and welcome to our team. Alrighty, back to residents' remarks. Seeing that you're heading up there, I'll do my blurb. The board encourages all residents to attend its meetings, and this section of the agenda affords them the opportunity to speak. Persons wishing to speak should identify themselves, state whether they are a resident of the Elwood School District and any organization they represent at the meeting. Comments related to the district business or any agenda items should be kept as brief as possible and may not exceed 3 minutes. Board Policy 1230. And questions or comments concerning matters which are not on the agenda will be taken under consideration and may be discontinued by the president. Public discussions of matters relating to staff, students, or others at which their reputation, privacy, or right to due process could in some way be violated is prohibited.
Hi, Megan Drees, resident. I'm just here to ask if the funding for UPK has gone up since last year and how many families will be in the lottery this year, just kind of an update with the numbers there.
Thank you for the question. Our allocation for UPK has not gone up. It's flat from the current school year, which leaves us the availability to have 77 students enroll in our UPK program. And for the community members out there, tomorrow the UPK lottery registration will open. So if you are interested in enrolling your child in our universal pre-kindergarten program, please visit our website and fill out the lottery registration form. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Thank you.
Am I allowed?
Sure.
Okay. I thought that it's always, the number goes up based on what the enrollment or the interest is the previous year before. So if the previous interest is higher than, shouldn't that be I guess the foundation for which the following year is? So like if we had 50 this year or we had 100 interested, wouldn't the eligibility number be like at least 100 for the following year? Isn't it always,
What's the parameters of the baseline, and how come we don't,
Yeah.
how are we not seeing more opportunities for enrollment, I think is.
That's exactly what I'm asking.
So our first year, I believe we had 40 seats available, and we were able to report to the state that we had a much higher interest.
Right.
The current school year, we had 77 seats. I believe we had about 100 or so initial applicants, but not all of those applicants had a choice of school, so not all of them were able to get into the school that they wanted, so they chose not to enter into our universal program and instead went on a tuition based directly with the school. So we can't reflect the interest similarly to the previous year.
So if those students went to our UPK, our CBOs, let's just say, then they would have increased our potential numbers for this year.
It's a potential. I don't.
Okay.
I can't say for sure, but that the reflecting more of an interest certainly helps us.
But every family that wanted UPK got a spot, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
There was openings, though, is the question. Right, last year.
Yes, I'm sorry. Currently, I believe we have 3 spots available for universal pre-K. We actually had a community member call this week after I posted through Parent Square that we had a few seats available. The schools reached out to me because we had some withdrawals, and there was a message sent out through Parent Square, which was subsequently removed because I think it confused some of the parents who were looking to register for the 24-25 school year. But we did have a parent reach out, and we are able to offer him one of our open spots.
I don't know if I'm going to word this
Yep.
question right, but is there a way for applicants to show whether or not they're committed if they get into a certain spot versus maybe families who don't care where they go, and then we could kind of arrange the families that don't care where they go to maximize the number of families that are choosing to utilize UPK?
So the lottery application has a school of preference choice. So there are 3 organizations that we partner with for universal pre-K. So the the families do have the choice. You know, they can rank them 1, 2, 3. They can choose anyone and say they're not interested in that particular school. So after the lottery results come in, we reach out to those families to tell them, you know, you've got your first choice or your second choice. Some people only have 2 choices, so if they get the third school, then they tell us that they're not interested. That's kind of a work in progress as we move along. But from the onset, I don't believe there's a way to really decipher who would be interested and not interested.
Thank you. Any other residents?
Sorry. Hi, I'm Marlene Costanza, resident. My question is on behalf of myself and not any organization of which I am a part. It may actually be a question that's not permitted, and if that is the case, I'm very sorry. I was just wondering if the search for a superintendent has begun.
I can answer that without divulging information. So the search has begun. A large amount of dates that you heard the board approve before, those were many of our meeting for the superintendent. Obviously, those take place in executive session, so they're private and not privy to the public, but the process has been beginning, and we are going to be continuously updating the community as we go through it.
Thank you.
But we're in the preliminary stages of the search right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
James, do they have the website up, not the website, on the website, the button that talks about, the updates? I thought we had asked for that.
I believe so. I believe the update is, I believe it was updated. Because I remember sending the email, so yes, it should be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. What Ms. Weiss is referring to is there's a superintendent search tab on the website, and information is going there. Thank you.
Good evening, Amy Kern. Last May, I learned that biological boys are permitted to use girls' bathrooms at John Glenn. This practice is not required by law. By law, every student enjoys equal rights to a safe educational environment free from discrimination. Title IX regulations specifically permit schools to have separate boys' and girls' bathrooms and locker rooms. New York State law requires only that all single-use bathrooms be designated as gender neutral. The intention of this law, of course, is not just to have gender-neutral bathrooms, but to have them accessible. Our single-use bathrooms are often locked due to vaping. Locking these bathrooms removes a private space, renders Elwood out of compliance, and transfers vaping to the girls' bathrooms. Since May, the district has purported to be following the advice of district council. Last fall, in response to my repeated requests for the specific laws requiring schools to allow biological boys to enter girls' bathrooms, Ms. Fallon obtained a letter from district council. The letter is no more than a paraphrase of NYSED guidance, which seeks to reinterpret the New York State Human Rights Law, DASA, and Title IX to afford greater rights to one protected class over others. District Council also followed NYSED's lead in citing laws pertaining to credit and employment attainment having nothing to do with schools at all, let alone school bathrooms. In 2019, gender identity was added as a protected class under the New York State Human Rights Law. This addition did not replace biological sex as a protected class. Although the law affords every student equal rights to safe educational environment free from discrimination, that is not happening. Girls are being asked to sacrifice their legal right to safety during the school day by sharing their most private space with boys. Alternatively, they must either wait until the boy exits, use the gender-neutral bathroom, provided it is unlocked, or use the nurse's bathroom. Each of these alternatives posed a logistical nightmare given the ratio of students to toilets. At one point, I was told that girls can seek an accommodation if they are uncomfortable sharing their designated private space with boys. This suggestion makes the exception the rule and creates the exact type of discrimination that the laws were enacted to prevent. I've requested that all students be afforded the same non-discriminatory choices: use of their biologically aligned bathroom, use of the gender-neutral bathrooms, or use of the nurse's office bathroom. Alternatively, I suggested that the bathroom monitors be stationed inside the bathrooms in the sink area to ensure student safety. Neither request has been granted. Instead, district administration has said that any incidents resulting from the presence of boys in the girls' bathrooms will be swiftly handled. No girl should have to endure an incident and the resulting traumatic physical and emotional effects in order for the district to address this issue. During the pandemic, we saw the disastrous effects to our students of giving NYSED guidance the weight of law. It is easy to hide behind the following district council defense, but you are not elected to do
That's
the
time,
easy
Mrs.
things.
Kern.
I've finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kern. Any other comments, residents' remarks?
Good evening, Louisa LaCourte, just the parent of Elwood. I wasn't planning on coming up here to talk, but Amy, since you touched upon this issue, go to weddings, there's a monitor there handing you, whatever you need. You go to a restaurant, there's somebody in there. Years ago, I would have never thought to even suggest to have a monitor in a school bathroom. That would have been a crazy, silly thing. But I think because times have changed so drastically, bathrooms are now used for vaping, getting into trouble, drug deals. You have boys coming in and out to vape. I think we live in times where maybe we need to try to consider having a monitor just to kind of monitor what is going on in there. They know that there's no cameras. They know that this is an opportunity to basically do whatever they can or want to do because they're not going to get caught. So I think that that would be a really good idea if possibly the board or whoever it is that can, maybe consider it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Court. This was a topic at the Safety Committee meeting about a week ago, and the conversation of monitors came up. We currently do have monitors outside of the bathroom, but there are people that are going into the bathroom. How they identify is part of the equation. If you have a young man identifying as a female going into the female's bathroom, then yes, they are protected, and that is what we talked about. But we came up what I think was a solution, or at least an idea, was to have either single-use users in the bathroom. You sign in, you go to the restroom. When you're done, the monitor signs you out. So there isn't multiple students in the bathroom at one time. The monitor can do a sweep of the bathroom afterwards to make sure there's no damage or anything going on that shouldn't be in the bathroom, graffiti, whatever it may be, and kind of not limit, but keep accountability of who's going into the bathroom and kind of work with what we have. So that was something we spoke about at the Safety Committee meeting. And Ms. Dunkel, we charged Ms. Dunkel and the administration with working through that and seeing if that was an opportunity or something we can do.
Don't they have sign-ins now? Aren't there sign-out sheets when you go? I mean, I don't know, I'm not.
Correct. They're signing out, but there's multiple students going in the bathroom at one time. So the sign out would be a student goes in, James goes in, I go to the restroom, I come out, the monitor does a sweep, Ms. Weiss has to go to the restroom. Kind of, it limits the amount of people in the bathroom.
Okay, and is
And
there
the concern of any proprieties that are taking place.
without being crude, is there a time limit? Like if somebody's in, if James is in the bathroom for, well, he's a guy. Okay, so if I go in the bathroom for 20 minutes or a half an hour, I mean.
If you're in the
that's what I'm asking.
If you're in the bathroom for a long period of time, maybe you have to go to the nurse's office.
Are there rules in terms of privacy that we can't have a monitor in the bathroom?
Well, I don't think a monitor in the bathroom. I
Not
wouldn't,
in the
want an
physical
adult in a
bathroom,
bathroom with children. I think that is not a good optic or a situation to put our monitor in. But somebody checking and when the student comes out to make sure there's nothing done.
I thought we had that already.
Well, I think there's a sign in, but I
thought
don't
that
think
was
there's.
being,
As far as the bathrooms, you have a gender-neutral bathroom, so that's one option. You have the bathroom of your choice. That's the other option. So we have multiple bathrooms. There's multiple bathrooms throughout the school. I think you could keep the movement of the bathroom going along, and I think students should be in class, not hanging out in the bathroom for 5 minutes. So.
Yeah, I just think that if, you have, 10 classrooms, let's say on the hallway with a bathroom, and you have 3 of those kids coming, they're going to the bathroom, and they want to go back to class, and now you're like, having them wait in line, it's for a multi-use bathroom.
Listen, logistically, it's not the best.
No, it's not
That was
logistically
always the
the best.
conversation. I mean,
Yeah.
the reality is single-use bathrooms. If you had
Yeah.
all single-use bathrooms, and this is a moot point, and it's done.
Well,
But we don't,
I
you know.
think that's maybe something
That
is-
might be an unfunded mandate that the
darn
governor throws
facilities
down next
committee
year.
has to look at.
I think you came up with a perfect solution, actually. I mean, one in, one out, and then sweep, because as we know, there have been issues in the bathroom that we've stumbled on, but you don't know which student engaged in what.
Correct. We had graffiti, right, in
Yeah.
the bathroom? So if the monitor is doing a sweep of the bathroom, student does something, we know which student it was. It's very easy to identify which student was the perpetrator there. If we don't, we just have children coming in and out, we're checking every 15 kids, but you can't pinpoint who it is. So this is accountability for the students as well. And if you know that you're being checked on or you're being watched, you're not going to do something. I bet you the bathroom use would go down. The Stanleys might be drinking, but I think the usage of the bathroom would stop. Next resident.
Good evening, Erin Abisher, resident. So I have, I think, two questions, or one question and one statement. At that safety meeting, and forgive me, I cannot recall his name, there was a teacher there. What was his name again?
We're not going to talk, we can't divulge teacher information.
He
Staff.
made a statement
Yes.
stated, okay.
One of the,
so-
the teacher was present, yes.
Okay, so the teacher spoke, and he felt that your resolution really was not actually in the best interest of the children, because it would affect the amount of time outside of the classroom, and it would be missed time within the classroom. So, you know, and I think that obviously it is important to take the consideration of what the educators are saying, and to keep that in mind. Also, I guess now is my question, why is it that we are continuing to follow guidelines as opposed to actual regulation or laws, or however you want to say it? I mean, why are we still continuing to permit this to happen when we have been told that it is not a legal requirement? We have fulfilled the legal requirements. We have offered gender-neutral bathrooms. So I'm just looking for clarification as to why we continue down this same path.
I mean, I'm going to speak partly to it, and then Ms. Fallon, you can jump in because you were at the conference and we're in the room with everybody. But, you know, as Ms. Curran mentioned, our council has advised us that we have to protect the rights of our students, the human rights of our students. And prohibiting that student, or any student for that matter, is a violation of the human rights law. That's law. That's what we've been instructed by our council. Now, to have 5 people up here just blatantly disregard council's recommendation, opinion, would be headless of us. We couldn't do that. If the lawsuit was brought up and we didn't do that, then we're putting this district in a liable standpoint.
And what about the flip side of that? What about the lawsuit that may come about because you are not protecting the rights of females and they are uncomfortable within those bathrooms? It's really a double-edged sword. I'm not saying that there's an easy solution, because you are really putting yourself in the line of fire regardless of how you look at it, and it will be one side or the other, but a lawsuit will be coming eventually. I mean, there's really no getting around that if this is where this is going to continue. It's just inevitable.
And that point was brought up at the safety committee meeting, and that's a question that our council has to render back to us, is we need an opinion on that. What about this other students' rights? So that's something we're going to be, you know, waiting to hear back from council on.
So that question, that question has been presented to council?
We have raised the question to administration. Ms. Fallon was we were waiting because Ms. Fallon went to, and she'll speak to it, she went to a meeting specifically on this topic. And
Okay.
now that we have the information from Ms. Fallon, the board was presented with that. Now our question wasn't answered, so council now has to come and render an opinion. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
And Ms. Fallon could speak to the
Yes, Mr. Tomio,
rituals.
that is accurate. What educators have been informed of is that it is a violation of New York State human rights law if you do not allow a student to be recognized by their identity. So all attorneys throughout Long Island, throughout New York State, That is the guidance that all school districts have received pertaining to the law.
So I just have one last question. So if a child wants to identify as a cat, are we providing kitty litter boxes? Like, where does the line
30
get drawn?
seconds, please.
Mrs. Abershaw, with all due respect, the Elwood School District is doing an amazing job making sure that all students who are attending our schools are comfortable in their school environment and that there are not violations.
That's untrue.
Students-
I'm sorry, that is untrue.
Well, what I would ask, and I have asked this in the past, is if there are any students that are uncomfortable in their school setting, they need to speak to a guidance counselor, to an administrator, to myself. And their
Conversations were
needs-
had with administrators, Ms. Fallon, and those parents were told, well, you're the only person that's complained about this, it's not a problem. And I know that firsthand. So it's a really sad time to be a female, honestly. And it's extremely discouraging to sit here and hear this explanation that the rights of...
That's time up, ma'am.
Fine.
Thank you, Ms. Abisher. Any other residents?
Good evening. Andre Berknell, resident, parent of 3 in the district. I'm not even sure how to phrase these questions. I apologize. I was busy and I missed the first remarks and much of Ms. Dunkel's financial budget report. But, you know, one of the things I wanted to ask, and I'm going to ask a few of them, and then if you need, I'll come back to the microphone. But I wanted to know, I know I missed a lot of the budget, and I'm not sure how much state funding we're getting. I also, my understanding from some of the things going on is that these topics that were just discussed with the last few residents are involve state guidelines, and I know you guys said that your lawyers advise you to follow these guidelines. And so part of me is, I think you'd be fools not to follow the advice of your lawyers. You know, sometimes we need new lawyers. That's a different topic. But that being said, with the state guidelines, I'm just wondering, how much are we concerned about possibly losing state funding, any possible percentage of state funding because we don't follow these state guidelines? And if you guys can address those two topics together, I would appreciate it.
So I could take the first one. The increase in state aid is projected to be $196,150. So not a lot compared to years past. And as far as not following the guidelines of New York State and the funding attached to it, Ms. Fallon, do you want to touch upon that?
I'm not aware of any
don't think so.
specific funding that would be attached to if you were in violation, and if the Attorney General, you know, recognized the district as being in violation. So I really can't speak specifically to that.
Any other residents wishing to speak? Seeing no residents, I have a motion to adjourn the meeting. Motion, Ms. Mamalito, second, Mrs. Weiss. All in favor, 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the winter recess.